What's going on, wrestling fans? Jeff Upson. I'm alongside Tom Housenick of the Morning Call, who we had on earlier in January, and now we had to bring him back on for his expertise. This is the biggest show of our year. This is no doubt the one show that probably will have the most views, the most interest, and that is simply because it is the Sunday before the state tournament in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And man, it was a long day. We had actually anticipated doing a show earlier in the day because we wanted to do AA and AAA. Today we're only doing AAA. Tomorrow we'll do AA. But the problem was we had some issues with the brackets. There was quite a few brackets that needed to be sorted out. Some errors with the prestige points and just a whole lot of headaches, I'm sure. But I think it's all squared away. I'm 99.9% sure everything is squared away now. Mike Lester from PIAA is an absolute pro, and he was able to go through and make sure verify everything was good. So, Tom, the brackets that we have now, I know you printed out 12 copies of the brackets, so I apologize for you wasting paper, but I think the brackets we have are good to go.
I hope so, because I'm excited about a bunch. I'm a little upset about a few, so let's hope this is good to go.
Let's hope so. And as you mentioned, you were at the Northeast Regional. I was at the Southwest Regional this past weekend, and the weekend before that, I was at the South Central Regional. So a lot of expertise between the two of us to kind of see the whole state and know what is going on and maybe who to look out for. So without further ado, because we're going to be here for a minute and probably some change, we're going to talk about each bracket. We're going to start at 106 pounds. We're at the top of the bracket. We have Nathan Desmond of Bethlehem Catholic. Tom, you've seen him on numerous occasions, and I know you just wrote a story on him kind of peaking at the right time, but I would say, man, he's been peaking all season, but he had a tough finals match. That was one of the matches I said we had to see this past weekend. Luke Sirianni of Abington Heights, who's a junior, undefeated coming into that match, state 6th place finisher last year. One of the tougher tests that Nathan had in Pennsylvania, but he was able to take care of business. Tom, what was the takeaway for you watching Nathan Desmond kind of dismantle Sirianni in that finals match?
Well, it was interesting to hear him describe that he had not had a good week of preparation, and that's kind of been a little bit of his, I don't want to say shortcomings, but that's something that's kind of been a work in progress because he's so darn good, and he can turn it on basically when he wants to, which is when the lights are on. But he kind of acknowledged that that's got to change this week. Even though it's a short week, he said, I've got to better prepare for what I'm going to face this week because I didn't have a good week. He said it didn't really show because I dominated everybody. But he knows that if he's going to be elite and not have a Tyler Kasak freshman moment where you have a bad 90 minutes, next thing you know, you're not only the state champ, you're 5th place as a freshman. I think he's kind of learning that lesson, and he's got Kasak there to tell him. He's got Colin Rath, who does not have any preparation issues. So he's kind of getting it from the experience end from a teammate, and he's getting it from a fellow freshman who's saying, hey, look, one slip up and you're not golden. So I think he'll be motivated to do what he's done basically in the postseason, which is just dominate everybody. And Sirianni's a physical, fast kid, and I expected that to be a lot closer of a match, and it was not close, not even for 30 seconds. Sirianni, I think, was a little hesitant, and Desmond really took advantage of that factor. And I think once Sirianni kind of got a little frustrated in the second period, that just kind of ignited Desmond again to kind of, I'm going to take you down again. I'm not just going to cruise here up 10 points. I'm going to take you down. I'm going to turn you. I'm going to try and embarrass you a little bit. And Desmond's got that crazy little eye. He's got that little twinkle that says, I'm a little crazy. I may be a freshman, but I've got that little spark that I'm not just going to sit once I figure I got this match under control. I'm going to kind of go after you. And I think he's going to really try and showcase that this weekend. But he's looked really sharp these two postseasons. Again, District 11, 106, AAA, not real deep. So Sirianni and Cook from West Scranton, those were two kids that were going to be really good tests for him, and he just he aced those tests.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see a lack of preparation because, like you said, he really just dominated in the finals there. Now, you look at the bracket, Tom, and the top half of the bracket in my opinion, and I'm going to pull it up on the screen here so folks can see it. But the top half of the bracket is really stacked because you have Desmond at the top, which we know he's been number one for the entire year. We know what he's capable of. But then you have Nico Finella, who was number two for, I would say, 90% of the year. He's in there as well. And then you have Luke Heilman from Altoona, another guy who is a senior. So like Suriani, he has a little bit more of a man strength to him. So I like that first-round matchup, Luke Heilman, Nico Finella, and a chance to wrestle Nathan Desmond. But you also have on the bottom quadrant here, you have Liam Flanagan from Central Dauphin, who had a great South Central Regional, really looked strong, looked just composed, and his mind was right. But then you have Tyler Kapusta, who is actually beating Nico Finella in their match in the semifinals before getting pinned by him. He had lost to him twice before earlier in the season. I really like that first-round matchup here between Flanagan and Kapusta. If Kapusta wrestles like he did in the Whitfield tournament, I think he's going to be in good shape. But the guy who maybe was a little bit more dominant than Nathan Desmond, now the competition was not nearly the same, but that's Eden Cement from Council Rock North, and he earned a tech fall in the finals to claim a Southeast Regional title. This kid, I got to see him at the Powerade tournament, and man, I was impressed. And he has not disappointed thus far. He actually has a win over Suriani in freestyle prior to the start of the season. So Cement is a guy who I think is really just, he's poised, man. And I think that could be a final, Desmond and Cement, if they were on opposite sides of the bracket. Unfortunately, they're on the same side. But I really like Cement's chances to get out to the semifinals, to have a test with Nathan Desmond. I think those two kind of wrestle in the same style. They like to really pour it on. Like you said, Desmond has that twinkle in his eye, like, hey, I'm a little crazy. I think Cement has a little bit of something in him too. Like, hey, if I'm getting pushed, I know how to turn it on. I know how to beat you up a little bit. And like you said, kind of really embarrass folks because you saw what he did in the Southeast Regional Finals. Now, that's the top half. On the bottom half, you have Aiden Beimel from St. Mary's, who had a very big win in overtime over Luke Heilman in the Northwest Regional Finals. Really good win for him. I like the bottom half because it's much more wide open, Tom, because you don't have as many stacked wrestlers there. Luke Willishell, man, he looked really good. Now, remember what happened when Nathan Desmond wrestled Luke Willishell in the team tournament. It wasn't really close, but you know as well as I do, following, Gabe Willishell, his older brother, the Willishells know how to wrestle and they know how to funk around a little bit. I would love to see him and Desmond go at it round two, Tom.
That would be entertaining. Again, the last thing you want to see is two guys, especially these lower weights, wrestling on their knees. We'll get to that in other weight classes, but it's always enjoyable to watch, like the second period with Desmond and Suriani. They went at it each other, and that's exciting to watch as opposed to guys just kind of, I don't know. It's just there's a speed and there's a not knowing what's going to happen in the next moment type thing. And again, Desmond, Suriani did get a reversal on him when he kind of got himself out of position, trying to get too crazy and turn him a second time at one point. So something like that happens against a kid like Willicho, he might not get himself out. There might be get himself in a funny position. I haven't seen Desmond get himself in bad positions a lot. He's only been taken down a handful of times all year. But again, that's, and you can't discount Cement either. I mean, I think that's going to be a really good semifinal. Yeah, assuming everybody gets there. But again, that top half, there's a lot of places where somebody could trip up if they have a bad couple of minutes. You're looking at, blowing up people's predictions. And it's just funny. We're going to talk about other bracket top halves, bottom halves, where it seems like they're just uneven.
Very uneven.
Say one thing. And this one here seems a little bit like that. But again, that bottom half might be entertaining to watch because you don't know who's going to win, the quarterfinals or the semifinals there. That'll be a lot of fun. Not that you know for sure up top, but it seems like there's a couple, 3, 4 that are just, clear cut better than everybody else.
Right. And looking at the bracket and kind of looking at some of the first round early matchups, I like some of the matchups. There's not a ton of first round matchups that I'm saying, hey, these are can't miss. Liam Flanagan, Kapusta, as I mentioned, is one of them. Heilman and Finella on the top half. On the bottom half, I think if that Dean Hauser Tanner Mazenko match, winner there against Aiden Beimel, I think that should be a good match. I really do think it's on the bottom half. You have Wilshell and Suriani as the favorites, and just a matter of who's going to be able to come out from one of those. And Suriani has man strength. I mean, he's a junior, but he looks like he's 18. He's huge. Like he's just strong. And seeing what Desmond was able to do to him was just so impressive. So 106 top half, no doubt, stacked. I'll go with a steady horse and say Desmond's going to find a way to get it. And I wouldn't look past Ed and Cement, Luke Wilshell, or Luke Suriani to try to mix it up a little bit. So outside of that, Tom, you have a couple guys from the Northeast region that I thought did well. Tyson Cook, as you mentioned, a state qualifier. Landon Machado from Delaware Valley. I don't know how the heck he came out of that, but he did. He knocked off some guys. He's going to have a tough match with Keegan Oler of Cathedral Prep. But overall, I like 106 because it's top heavy, but you also have some guys that aren't afraid to mix it up a little bit.
Right. Again, you hope that the lightweights will mix it up. They're the ones that are going to see 12-10 scores, or a 10-2 deficit turns into a 10-12 match, a 10-10 match. I mean, those are the kind of things you expect out of the lightweights, and I think there's the real good potential for a bunch of matches to be like that.
Let's move up to 113 pounds, where this is the bracket where today we had a lot of issues. It was switch, and there was switch, and there was switch back. And man, like as a father looking at the brackets, I can't imagine what it's like to see and say, like, all right, this is what you're prepared for. Nope, actually, just kidding. This isn't what it is. At the top of the bracket, we have Caden Williams from Manheim Township. By virtue of the fact he's a returning state champion, last year he won it in AAA at 106 pounds. He won his region, so we know that only the regional champions are quote seeded, right, in that bracket. So Caden Williams is at the top. On the bottom half, you have Jack Russo. Now, at one time, for about 4 hours today, where we're like delaying the show because we can't do the show with Jack Russo up on the top half. He was number 5. They fixed it. He's now on the bottom half. He's 36-1. He won the Northeast region. He's a returning state runner-up. Then you have Kale Nasdio from Williamsport, who was also a state runner-up last year, lost to Caden Williams in the finals. He was a regional champion from the Northwest. Let's throw in Tyler Chappell as well. Last year he was 3rd in the state, won his Southwest region. So now we have it set. Tony Burke from Council Rock North is your 5th regional champion, and he's on the top half. So the top half, Tom, is absolutely bonkers because you look at the first round matchup, and I'm going to put up the bracket on the screen here for folks to see. But, man, look at this first round matchup. Nick Allison, Tahir Parkins, Nazareth, Mifflin County. You got a freshman versus a senior. I'm really looking forward to that one, but I'm also really looking forward to Cole Campbell from Becca and Tony Burke from Council Rock North. I think that one there is a big one as well. Tom, Tahir Parkins has wrestled really well, but unable to get through and win a regional title. But look how deep the Northeast was here. You have a guy like Carson Wagner who was 4th out of that region. What was your takeaway from that 113 bracket?
Well, when I mentioned earlier about the wrestling on the knees, this is probably the one weight class where it just kind of, I think it irked a lot of people in the stands and a lot of the coaches. Parkins and Jack Russo, 2 incredibly talented wrestlers, spent 5 of the 6 minutes on their knees, not even in contact with each other, just on their knees. And it was just a shame to watch that develop and stay that way. You look in both coaching corners, and I know I can speak for Nazareth. They were not thrilled with that. And I know that the Del Val coaches have seen this before, and they've had to constantly get on Zach that when he's on the attack, he's hard to stop. But he just gets in this mode sometimes that, like, I'm just going to hang here on one knee, wait for them to make a mistake shooting, and I'm going to get my takedown, and I'm going to be good for the match. And that's what this was. It was probably one of the it was the least entertaining final. I would hope that both of those wrestlers are going to open up, because if they don't, I can see them not winning not getting out of the not getting out of the semifinal. I can see Parkins, if he doesn't come to wrestle, Allison's not going to wait for him. And I think if anybody's done their scouting homework, Parkins has some things that he's got to clean up, not just being casual wrestling on his knees. He's got some other things he has to work on. Again, he's a freshman. We can't be too harsh, but he definitely has some room for improvement. I didn't think he had a real great regional tournament. Cole Campbell, other than not being able to beat Parkins or Jack Caruso, which again a lot of people can't, he looked really good otherwise. He really dominated Wagner for a second time this year. They met down at Council Rock South at Escape the Rock, and Campbell looked really good. Now, he has not looked real sharp since, but I thought he looked good these last couple of weeks, except the fact that he's got Parkins and Jack Caruso this weekend. But I wouldn't discount him out of being able to make his way to the semis. But again, my concern is for the two elite wrestlers supposedly in this bracket, just the way they wrestled that final, that if some of that leaks into the States, there's too many good kids here who are gonna take advantage of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because I was actually talking to some folks out in the Southwest this weekend, and someone brought that up. They're like, when Jack Caruso and Parkins wrestle, neither one of them are going to come out of their stance. They're both on like a quad pod 3-point stance, and they both have a very similar style and way in which they attack. Now, Jack Caruso, when he opens up, he is lights out, and we've seen it. I mean, he beat Anthony Knox, one of the best wrestlers in the nation, right? We know that he's capable of it, but sometimes he just reverts in and sometimes doesn't get on his offense. Now, that's not to say that some of these other guys aren't going to be able to, like you said, scout that and try to work around it. But to this point, no one's been able to figure it out. Caden Williams is not the same Caden Williams he was last year, but he's pretty darn close. He had a win over Nico Tassi of Warwick, who he lost to the week earlier in sections, so he flip-flopped that result. That's his only loss on the season. Last year, he lost to Tyler Chappell in the Super Regional and ended up beating him in the semifinals to end up into the finals. I don't know. I have a lot of questions at 13, and a lot of it is more not necessarily ability. It's between the years.
Absolutely.
We know that everybody in this bracket, at least the top guys in this bracket, are capable and able. I'm just worried about up here. And like you said, there's a lot of some of the off the mat stuff that we have going on, and just that mental edge, that mental side of things. I think we're going to see it play out here at 113 pounds. Now, the top half, Caden Williams, if he wrestles like he did, any glimmer of what he had last year, and also in the South Central Regional, I think he has a good chance to repeat. But like you mentioned with Kasak earlier, you have a bad round, a bad 30 seconds, a bad period. It's Hershey. People are going to exploit that and take advantage of it. Tyler Chappell, he had a little bit of a tough go with Darius McMillan from Peters Township in the Southwest Regional, but he's wrestled a lot of these guys before. He's wrestled Caden Williams before. He wrestled Jack Caruso earlier this year when they're both at 120. I love, and I'm going to switch over to the bracket now, but I love this bottom quadrant here with Cale Nasdio and Carson Wagner and Luke Heimbach. I believe Wagner's going to come out from that. You saw Nasdio and Wagner. They wrestled in the Top Hat tournament. Wagner beats Nasdio, pins him, and here they are wrestling potentially in the first round of the state tournament. That to me is lights out. You got two guys that are state medalists that are going at it in the first round, trying to get a shot in the quarterfinals, where I think either one of them has a good chance to get to the semifinals. I don't. This is where I say, I understand why it is the way it is because of the way the regions are, but some regions are just so much tougher than others, and I think we see that here at 113 with the way the brackets shake out.
Yeah, no question. Again, Nasdio, Wagner's two wrestlers. One is someone who's timid and not confident in his offense. That's the one we saw against Nasdio in the quarterfinals last year at States. That's why Nasdio won and went on to the finals. Then you see them right off the bat, Top Hat, and Wagner was aggressive, and he pounced on one little mistake Nasdio made, and he's not a pinner, and that's why I said to him after that match. I remember saying, I don't remember you pinning a quality kid like that. And he said it's kind of been a long time coming, but it's kind of been up and down throughout the year, and He has not looked good twice against Cole Campbell. He did not look good against Jack Caruso. He's got it in him, but it's a matter of which one shows up. And again, Nasio is one of those ones that if you want to keep it a low scoring match, he's perfectly fine with that. He'll wait for you to make a mistake like he did with Parkins in the team state match. He's fine winning 3-1. Whereas Wagner needs to get the score up, and he needs to tire out his opponent. He's not going to get tired. He just has to take enough shots that he works up a sweat, and he hasn't done that at key times. He didn't do it in the Super Regional twice last year. He got away with it. Didn't get away with it against Nasio at States. He's just got to kind of let his head get out of the way and let his body kind of take over. And that's his only chance to survive that bottom half, to even get past, like we said, the first round with Nasio, assuming he can beat Heimbach. But he's got the talent, but I think a lot of his issues are his mind letting his body do what he can do.
You look at that bottom half, and I really like Nico Tassi. He's just an incredible story, number one, but he's a senior, and he's a goer. My gosh, he goes. He doesn't do a whole lot. He's not flashy. He's not somebody that is going to come out and do anything that is going to wow you. He just does a lot of the little things and the basics really, really well, and that's what ended up him beating Caden Williams. He was like a dog on a bone, and yes. He was almost taken down, but never stopped wrestling. He's dangerous. I don't want to be – I wouldn't want to line up against him. I'd rather line up against some other guys here. So I'm keeping an eye on him. I also want to keep an eye on Darius McMillan. Him and Cole Smith on that bottom half, I think that's a great first-round matchup. I hadn't seen a ton of McMillan up until the Southwest Regional, and I was impressed. He can mix it up. He's very tall for a freshman. I mean, his brother is a Division I football player at Florida. He was a state runner-up a few years back, and Darius is definitely following in those footsteps. I would love to see him and Jack Caruso go at it in the quarterfinal round, because I think it's a contrast in styles for sure. Most people are a contrast in styles to Jack Caruso, unless they're to hear Parkins, because both of them kind of wrestle the same. Overall, though, Tom, at 113, I don't have a good feeling either way. I think there's just so many question marks. I mean, in terms of rankings, and I tell the people this all the time, rankings and predictions are completely different, right? Rankings, the formula and the criteria are different than your gut feeling and how you think is going to shake out. And you look at 113, and I really just don't know. I mean, Nick Allison could get hot. Cole Campbell could get hot. Tyler Chappell could end up coming out to Tyler Chappell has a win over Caden Williams. Who's to say he can't get out there, right? Like you said with Wagner and Nasdio, there's so many question marks here. I like 113 because of the depth, but I also like it because of the uncertainty and the ability we already talked about. It's there. It's all the other factors that leads me to believe that 113 can go like scripted or completely off the rails.
I would love to take Tassi's energy and just relentlessness, and put it in some of these other kids we've talked about, and then you have a 4-time state champ.
Yeah,
because he's going to wrestle you for 6 minutes no matter who you are. He's going to come at you. And there's other guys in other brackets here who have that similar personality, and they may not be the most talented, but they're going to win matches because of that relentlessness. They're not going to give up. They just have that fight in them, and it's great to watch.
It really is, and Tassi is one of those guys who I really enjoy watching just because of that. And I'm excited to see how he ends his career here, because it's a great story, right? Let's go up to 120 pounds. We're 120 pounds. So if I said 113 was bonkers, which I think I did say that, 120 is bonkers to the 10th degree. It's absolutely insane, Tom. When we look at the bracket, right, we have state medalists and state ranked guys littered across here. So let me just break it down for you for the top half. Mason Leapart, state third last year. Charlie Bunting, state medalist. Troy Homan, state fourth last year. Asher Cunningham, a pretty good freshman with a name that most Penn State fans know. Jacob Haupt, a guy who's just a grinder and making his first trip to the state tournament. Carmen Cortez from Westchester Henderson had a big win over a state medalist, Ziegler, to win a Northeast or Southeast regional title. Sean Lowe from Father Judge, a state medalist 2 years ago. He missed all of last season, and actually I'd say 80% of this season. He's also on the top half. My gosh. I mean, it's insane. And you've seen Bunting, a whole heck of a lot. Him and McIntyre, I mean, they've wrestled what, 20 times, right? They've wrestled a
Feels
lot.
like it.
And you know, it seems like the tide has now turned, and you know, it, as before Bunting was coming out on top. Now that's not the case. Looking at the top half, Tom, I like Mason Leapart. He's undefeated. People say, well, yeah, who did Dover wrestle? Look, go back and watch his state tournament from last year and watch how close he was with Mac Church, and see how really close he was to getting that win. I like Mason Leapart. I like Charlie Bunting and Troy Homan first round. That to me is insane. Tom, 120 doesn't get much better than this.
No, and if somebody can tell me right now who the top 4 finishers would be, I would say you're lying, because you could have 4 guys who have not even thought about that could finish here because it's so balanced. And the guy all the way down the bottom, who's been a state champ 2 years ago, Vinny Kilkeary, again, tremendous energy. His match against KSAC 2 years ago was still one of the most unbelievable third periods I've seen by a freshman. Bunting is one of those kids too who kind of, you know, him and Jack, when they wrestled earlier this year, was just, again, on their knees for 5 minutes. Jack Caruso actually tried to get offensive, and Bunting was just waiting for him and got a quick takedown and backs, and that was the match. That was the only action in the match. And I think that's a real problem for Bunting, because he's found out this year McIntyre's not going to sit down and wait for him. He's gone after him the minute the whistle blows, and he's able to go for 6 minutes, which is something that McIntyre wasn't able to do last year. He's kind of reinvented himself, and I'd be very disappointed if McIntyre couldn't go a full 6 minutes and, you know, come out on top against a kid like Kilkeary, who's not going to quit if they were to get to that point, because he's really matured this year. And again, I've seen Bunting kind of, you know, again, he's missed a lot of time. He had off-season surgery on his shoulder. You know, he has not been healthy, but what he's got in guts, he's got to kind of take to kids a little more than he has if he's going to survive any part of that top half. You know, he could lose in the first round. It wouldn't surprise me. He could win 3 matches in a row. Wouldn't surprise me. I'm just not sure what we're going to get from him. You know, he's always made the statement that, you know, McIntyre may beat me now, but I'm going to beat him when it counts. Now he did beat him at team states, but that's the only time he beat him so far in the 5 tries. Now, does he get a chance at him again? If he wrestles like he has for a good chunk of this year, I don't think he gets that chance, unless it's in the consolations where neither one of them think or want to be. So that top half, I mean, I couldn't. I've seen the Cortez kid, Bunting, you know, handled him in the first round of team states, but he, you know, if you can beat Ziegler, and Ziegler was, you know, inches away from beating Bunting in the holiday tournament over Bethlehem at Christmas. These guys are so evenly matched that if somebody has a good couple hours, a good couple shifts, they're going to find themselves in the finals. But they could also find themselves having to win 4 matches through consolations to medal. So this is absolutely one of those brackets that just is absolutely crazy.
What was your takeaway of Sean Logue from Father Judge? He wrestled Bunting in the semifinals. He's a guy who 2 years ago, I mean, I know you and I saw him at Escape the Rock, and, you know, just a tough wrestler. He's just been off the mat for, you know, over 12 months, almost 16 months. What did you make of him? And you know, if he is he a threat?
There's no question he's a threat. I think if you took away about 90 seconds against Bunting, he pretty much wrecked everybody else. He looked really good. He looked better than what I remembered him, to be honest. But again, you miss a year and a half. You're going to be a little rusty in spots. You're going to make mistakes when, you know, you can't at this level. So he has the potential to, you know, find him to get himself against Ortlippen and beat Cortez, and next thing you know, he could be in the semis. He has that ability, but jeepers cats, that somebody has to lose here. I don't know who's going to lose up top. Like I said, there's going to be some really good wrestlers that are just, you know, they're not going to medal,
right?
And that's just nuts. But this is the kind of bracket, and that's going to be fun to watch. I think it's going to be more fun than some of the potential matchups we have in 13, only because of style. I think there's a lot of potential here for some high-scoring matches.
Some fireworks.
There's going to be fireworks if Kilkeary's involved, no doubt. Like I said, McIntyre's had a different year this year, and there's just so many good wrestlers here. There's not going to be a lot of 2-to-1 matches, I don't think.
No, I would agree with you, and let's pull up the bracket right now because I just want to break down some of these matchups here. So, at the top you have the Mason Leapart, and I think he's gonna be tested early, depending on who comes out here with Homan and Bunting. I do expect Leapart to win his first round, but that quarterfinal match with Bunting or Homan is going to be a war. I really do think the winner there, that match is probably one of the best first round matches. That's the first two guys that are returning state medalists, both high medalists. So that's a really good matchup. Asher Cunningham and Jacob Halp, another one that I have circled as you've got to watch this one. Halp is a guy who read all about it. He was going to go down to 13, didn't happen because of the descent plan, and just he took it on the chin, and he wrestled hard, finished third behind guys like Kilkeary and Homan to finish third and make his first trip to the state tournament. I like those four to potentially push Leapart for a spot in the finals. I'm not saying Cortez can't do it because obviously he beat Ziegler, but these four I think are the biggest threats to Mason Leapart to hand him his first loss of the season. Now, going down to the bottom, it doesn't get much easier. We talked about stacked and not stacked. I would say the bottom half is pretty stacked. You have Cale McIntyre, obviously. That Hunter Johnson-Mason Kiernan match, I like that one. Kiernan's a guy who is super long and can slow down anybody, so he could really upset some folks that are looking to score points. Gavin Sheridan from Boyertown, Camden Williams from Manheim Township. Tom, let's press pause and let's remember what Camden Williams did last year at the Super Regional and the Regional Tournament. I mean, go back and watch Camden Williams versus Vinny Kilkeary, and you can see why Camden Williams is a hand grenade, because if he's on and he's mentally ready and prepared, he could win this bracket, no doubt. But at the South Central Regional, we didn't see that. He just, again, between the years, some things are going on there where it's just the focus may not be there. He didn't wrestle against Leapart in the finals, one match that I think everybody wanted to see. If he brings it, if he is ready, he's prepared, he's going to practice, he's put in the work, mentally ready, he's going to be a problem. Just, again, watch the Kilkeary match from last year. But also, you have Mason Ziegler, who I've been really impressed with this year, had a slip up in the Cortez match. That was a setback for him. And Vinny Kilkeary, obviously, on the bottom. You said it, when Vinny Kilkeary's involved, fireworks can happen. Well, I would say depends on what Vinny Kilkeary shows up, because Vinny Kilkeary at Powerade, not the Vinny Kilkeary that we remembered from freshman year when he took out Kasak, he took out Van D in just so much fashion that it was, I mean, he had the place on standing ovation. So Kilkeary, I will say, at the Southwest Regional Tournament, Tom, he opened up. Go back and watch the match with him and Homan. He put it on, and I got to talk to him afterwards, and he said, you know what? I'm going out swinging. I can't be reserved. That Adam Schweitzer match from Powerade, he said, I can't have that. I have to bring it. And we saw that. Kilkeary knows how to win in Hershey. I think that match with Jack Caruso last year still stings him, so I know he's looking to try to get past that, but I don't know. I don't know what to expect here, because there's like you said, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of unknowns, but it's going to be fun to watch. And I believe we have another guest on with Dustin Hawkinsmith. He was on a birthday party for about 9 hours today, but he's here. Dustin, welcome to the show, bud.
Hey, I'm just here for Tom Housenick's TED Talk on wrestling and to hear more phrases like Jeepers Cats.
Jeepers Cats, I know, right? Tom, I love it. You bring a flavor. Dustin's got the Jurassic Park shirt on. Tom's got the nice one-liners. Dustin, 120. You've seen Mason Leapart numerous times. You've seen Camden Williams. What do you make of 120, Dustin?
Well, it's a minefield no matter who you are, and no matter where you're starting in the bracket. There will not be an easy round no matter how favored you are. So Mason Leapart, PA Powers, number one. He's a matchup problem for everybody because he's long and he's funky. He's got an iron grip from the top position. I think he can tilt just about anybody in the state. So what he can do from the top position can help him separate in tough matches. He's very accustomed to wrestling 4-1 matches, and he's very comfortable in those positions, which is going to come in handy because I think every one of them, they might not be low scoring, but these are all going to be tight matches. His comfort level in those matches is important, I think. Turned a corner last year going from 2 and out at states as a sophomore to being a bronze medalist last year. I think he needed to kind of get to that mental place where he believed in every single match that he was the better wrestler and that he was going to win. I think he got there last year. But right off the bat with Bunting and Homan, he's going to have a battle. Jacob Haupt, he wrestled and lost to Asher Cunningham earlier this season, did he not?
Yeah, at King of the Mountain.
So that'll be a fun little rematch there. In the bottom half of the bracket, I did hear you guys talking about Camden Williams, the great wild card in this entire bracket, the real big wild card in the bottom half for sure. Now, the question is with both Camden and Caden Williams is how much in 2 weeks, which is about how much time they'll have had from districts and regionals to now, can you up your conditioning game? Minutes 5 and 6, are they going to be a liability for both Williams? Because we've seen that we saw them both, Jeff, at regionals take some questionable injury time late in matches. They are going to be pushed hard every step of the way in this one. Are they going to be able to be fresh and quick in the third period? Because they're going to be doing some third period wrestling. I think Caden Williams is a little bit better shape than Camden is, but Camden, I mean, you talk about a fireworks show. You don't want to go upper body with him. He's a big fan of that Greco stuff. He's going to be a matchup problem. He is for Vinny Kilkeary. He might still be, but I think it's safe to say the Camden Williams we've seen so far this year in 21 matches isn't quite the same kid that we saw last year.
Yeah, and I would agree with you there. But man, I mean, just his last year's run was just incredible. And I think you look at the bottom, the steady horses, if you will. McIntyre has been just, as Tom alluded to, he's reinvented himself. Kilkeary, I think, throughout the season has reinvented himself. I think he knows that guys wrestle him differently. And I think he's just prepared to go out and not have that same result from last year where he led it up to the refs. He did not go out the way he wanted to. So I think that kind of weighs on him a little bit. I would love to see a Lee Part and Kilkeary final, if you're asking my opinion, because I think there are contrasting styles. Lee Part is a very traditional guy who's gonna, like you said, he can turn about anybody on top. Kilkeary, on the other hand, he likes to mix it up. He likes to dig underhooks. He likes to go upper body a little bit. Watch the Troy Homan match from this weekend. He went 50-50 position with him like 2 or 3 times and won every one of them. So it's, like Tom said, I think it has as much depth and maybe more than 113, but I think it's going to be a lot more exciting just because you have guys that style-wise are just very fun to watch, and I know we're looking forward to it. Tom, any further thoughts on 120 before we move up?
Well, I think there's no question Williams is going to have to wrestle 6 minutes every match. This is one of Bethlehem Catholics, according to Jeff Karen, one of his best conditioned teams. McIntyre is a prime example of that. He was not that way in a lot of ways in his first couple of years. He goes 6 minutes. That's the reason he's beaten Bunting a bunch of times. Williams is definitely more talented, but McIntyre is not the same kind of kid he's been. He's going to go after you, and he's confident now, and he's better conditioned. He can go 6 minutes. So that Williams is going to have to earn his way out of that bottom half of the bracket.
Yep.
There's no question his talent level is, I don't know if anybody's as talented in this bracket, but it's got a lot more to do than just talent. So we'll see. It'll be fun.
Absolutely, it will. And Dustin, we're going to move up to 126 pounds, where you and I talked about this at South Central Regional and how deep this bracket is and how much the regional tournament is going to play into the state tournament, right? Because these guys were all mixed up and matched up where you had regional guys going head-to-head. Classic example last night, Jacob Van D, Dalton Perry. Holy hell, that was a heck of a match. And we tweeted out the last, I think, 30 seconds of that, and go and watch it. They were in overtime. I don't think Jacob Van D knew that the match was tied. I think he thought he won, and he looked a little confused. And then they go into overtime, and what does Dalton Perry do? He hits a headlock. My gosh, I mean, we saw him do it at True Power 2 years ago to beat Vinny Kilkeary as an 8th grader, and he does it as a freshman to earn a spot at the state tournament. And yeah, he's not rewarded too well because he's on the top half, and it's pretty stacked. But I think this one has a lot more parity. I think there's a lot of stackedness on each one of these. So let's start at the top. Carl Schindeldecker from Chambersburg's at the top. He was a state runner-up last year, lost to Mac Church. He's 21-1 on the season. Oliver Fairchild and Todd McGann. Oliver Fairchild's a guy who has a win over Northeast, two-time wins over Braxton Appello Freeze from Nazareth, who ended up winning Northeast. Tom will talk a lot more about that. You also have Maddox Shaw from Thomas Jefferson. Maddox Shaw made his name known to the planet when he was a runner-up at Powerade this year, losing to Vince Bazakis. An incredible freshman, but he lost in the Southwest Regional. This is why that regional tournament was so important, to see where we're going to see these wrestlers and see some of those early matchups. So Maddox Shaw, now on the top half, potentially has an early round matchup, quarterfinal match with Carl Schindeldecker, senior versus freshman. I love that. I hope it happens. Braxton Appello has not an easy draw there with Quinn Smith. Appello's a guy who did not win 12 times this year. Quinn Smith has been consistent. He was in a pretty deep Southeast region. That's an early round matchup that I really like. Dalton Perry, Xander Fatoris, Zach Luckenball. I think Perry is just on a different level. If you're going to ask me, I think he makes it to the semifinals. But that's a lot to be said about some of those other guys there. On the bottom half, it doesn't get much easier, because you have Ethan Lieben from Hempfield area, who was a regional champion. He lost to Shaw, an ultimate tiebreaker in the sections, comes back and beats him in the finals last night. Gunnar Myers is there, Matthew McConney from Abington, Brady Collins, a super tough freshman that I like from Clearfield, Josh Hillard. And then the match to end all matches, Jacob Van D, Dante Frenzy. Tom, Dante Frenzy picked a really crappy time to lose to Braxton Appello, because now he draws state champ Jacob Van D in the first round. These guys have wrestled, 30 times, Braxton and Dante, and man, talk about luck of the draw for that one.
Yeah, Appello even said last night, he said, I'm really bored and frustrated with wrestling the same guy so many times. But yet, it's always the highlight of any tournament, because those two bring out the worst and the best in their respective fans. Again, we talked about conditioning, and I go back to the frenzy match at States last year against Schindeldecker. And Schindeldecker is not going to take a step backwards. He showed that last year. He was a tough kid. Frenzy wasn't ready for that. He wasn't prepared for that. He had trouble on bottom against Schindeldecker, and ultimately he lost. He still has those kinds of moments, and that's the reason why we're talking about him meeting up with Van D in the first round.
Yeah.
He again, he was stuck in a close match where, again, one little mistake, and you're losing. And that's, Appello has gotten better. He admittedly was wrestling poor for the first month, 6 weeks of the year, not wrestling like a two-time state medalist, not wrestling with any confidence. But he's gotten better. Again, I'm not going to talk about him getting through that top half of that bracket, but he's wrestled a lot better. And, he was in position to beat Frenzy at team states, was in much better position than he was the previous few times this year. And he finally got the moment to do it last weekend or this weekend. And he could have kind of gotten frustrated when there was an injury time taken, when it looked like he was about to get the winning reversal with 20 seconds left, but he kept his composure. He was down on bottom, which, is not a good thing to be with Frenzy. He's had a lot of success just cradling up kids, because he's so long, and he's gotten a little bit stronger. But, Appello was not afraid to go down bottom. It was his choice. The coaches said, whatever you feel like you can do. And here we are, 20 seconds left, third period. You're still not getting out, but he was able to pull it off. And again, that was even another confidence boost for him. But for both of those guys to meet again, I don't see how it happens unless it's in consolations, because there's just too many minefields here for guys who just have had their moments where they haven't looked really good this year. And you have a bad moment here, and you're in real trouble real fast. So that's a really brutal matchup for Frenzy, and not a good one. But he's got a bit of an edge to him. You never know how he's going to come out. I thought he was not as aggressive as he normally is in the regional final here against Appello, but I've seen him other times where he just wants to rip your head off, and he's going to do it one way or the other, because once he gets on top of you, whether he gets a takedown or he chooses top to start a period, he can be really rough on people. But as Schindeldecker showed last year, it can be done, that you can out tough him even when the stakes are really high. So this is just going to be an absolutely loaded field for him to be able to get out of that bottom half of the bracket.
One of the guys who I have circled as a dark horse kind of guy, and maybe that's not fair to him, but he's an undefeated senior, 36-0, Cannon Hershey from Oxford area, out of District 1, won a pretty deep 126-pound bracket out of the Southeast region. He's a guy who last year was a state qualifier, year before that state qualifier, but hasn't, never pushed through, never broke through like these other guys. Dante Frenzy, 2-time state medalist, took out Carter Dybert from Franklin Regional. That gets you, some highlight reel tape right there. Van D, state runner-up to Kilkiri, wins it last year over Jack Russo, a weight that Vinny Kilkiri was in. Josh Hillard, guy who was a state qualifier as well, senior. Brady Collins, a freshman that I really like. So in this bottom half, I could see Ethan Lieben coming out to the semifinals and having Van D, Frenzy, Cannon Hershey. I don't know. Anthony Ferrero down there in the bottom behind Richland, he has a win over Ethan Lieben. So all these guys have wrestled each other. For Taurus, another guy who, I think much like Braxton Appel, at times just did not wrestle like himself without confidence this year. And we saw him pick it up to take third in the Southwest Regional, a weight where Dylan Coy from North Allegheny didn't even make it to the state tournament. Last year, he beat Mac Church to win a WPIAL title. That's a whole nother story and how deep the West is. But like you said, landmines everywhere. When you look at this, Dustin, South Central Regionals outside of, Schindeldecker is not very well represented, I would say. But the East in general, I think, is going to try to hold their own against some of the guys from out the West and Middle.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And now, Josh Hillard from Manheim Township is just a super steady, solid veteran. And I don't know that he landed in the most unfavorable position to maybe make a run at the semifinals. I don't think that would be a huge shocker. I don't think anything from that little pod there would be much of a surprise because I don't think anybody really establishes themselves as a can't lose kind of guy. So there's a possibility there. But for me, my eyes are on Carl Schindeldecker and whether he can get back to the finals. Interesting thing with this potential contrast of experience versus freshman is day one versus day two. Like I would love to catch Dalton Perry on day one wrestling for the very first time at Giant Center in the postseason. I don't think that it's going to make much of a difference because he's that good and that explosive, but it gives you a little bit of a fighting chance, especially if you're, say, Xander Fatoris or Zach Luckenball coming out of that prelim match. You got a match under your belt. You got maybe a little head of steam going in. So that's one thing to watch. Maddox Shaw will have an opportunity to maybe wrestle out any jitters on Thursday and for a potential showdown with Schindeldecker on Friday. Schindeldecker, the thing that makes him so good and so tough in this tournament is that there's not really a style matchup that negatively impacts him. If you want to scramble, he can scramble. If you're an attacking guy, he can reattack. If you're a defensive wrestler, he's gotten a lot better in terms of creating his own offense and attacking. He can score from top. He's a pretty creative guy. There's a lot going for him, and it makes him so tough in that survive and advance situation because he finds a way to survive and he finds a way to advance. Tough matchup with Maddox Shaw. I do think in that one, experience wrestling in Hershey is going to be a big deal. And so I like Schindeldecker to get through there and set up some kind of exciting semifinal. Maybe it's Dalton Perry, maybe it's Apello Freeze trying to get that last hurrah. But I think this is going to be fun on Friday and Saturday.
Tom, when you look at the Northeast region, Oliver Fairchild, he's a great story. He's had a great year. Had a couple wins over Braxton Apello. He finds himself in the fourth position out of the Northeast, loses to Gunnar Myers from Wallenpaupack, who I think is, he's had a great year as well. Maybe not the toughest of competition, but I still think he's a very good wrestler there. What do you make of guys like Fairchild or Myers and their chances of trying to break through and make some impact here?
Well, Myers definitely left an impression last year as a freshman. He came into the regional and didn't look like he cared. He was wrestling in District 11 against any District 11 kids with all these experience, and he fared pretty well. I thought this year, though, this again, and maybe this goes back a little bit to Kilkerry, I didn't see the same kid this year. He wasn't nearly as aggressive. It was more like, I'm not going to make a mistake. I'm going to hold out until someone else does. And a couple of times that wasn't there. So he wasn't the same kid that I saw last year. And again, sometimes those wide-eyed freshmen, they don't realize what's going on until it's too late, and then they've already done something they probably shouldn't have done. So I think that he will wrestle better this weekend, but that again, he's in a tough spot. Where does he find 3 wins? I don't know if he can do that against this kind of competition, but he's the kind of kid that I know if you drop him down to consolations, whenever it happens, he's going to fight his way through and scrap for a medal. So he's got that kind of fight in him. Fairchild is one who's still, as a junior, is still kind of evolving. He's a runner, and it wasn't until this past off season where he really took wrestling with any seriousness that other kids with his ability kind of did. Easton went on a little journey up to the mountains in Vermont, I think it was, and he really committed himself as much to wrestling as he did to running. But he, as much as he has this kind of chill, never worked up kind of attitude on the mat, he also doesn't have that button to just kind of to go after somebody. So this will be a big step for him. I don't see him surviving 3 matches up the top there to get to a Final Four, but he's a kid. He's not going to back down, but I just don't think he has enough in his tank to beat these kind of kids, to make adjustments to different styles and be able to take somebody coming right at his face for 6 minutes. He's really struggled against Frenzy. I mean, their matches were not close from the opening whistle. Whereas then he's beaten Apollo Freeze twice.
Right.
But then Apollo Freeze is the one who's got 6 wins against Frenzy. It's like, wait a minute, this doesn't make a lot of sense. But and the crazy part is, Fairchild and Apollo Freeze are really good friends, and they were wrestling partners until Apollo Freeze transferred this year to go to Nazareth. So the first one to thank Apollo Freeze, or give him congratulations with the gold medal, was Fairchild. They couldn't have been happier, as if it were his own brother. So that was a pretty cool moment. But again, I don't know if either one of those 2 kids have that that killer instinct to kind of go after people of this level for 2-3 days and come out on top every time. Apollo has showed a lot of guts in what he did against Frenzy, but he's got to do that for 6 minutes against a lot of people. And I think what turned his season kind of around was the Fatoris match at Team States. He had not wrestled well to that point, and he really, that again, is Fatoris at the level of Schindeldecker or some of these other guys we're talking about? Van D? No, but that's still a pretty good win for him to kind of say, okay, I am pretty good and I can beat these state level guys. Whether they can do it, 2 or 3 matches in a row, I don't know, but they put himself in a position to do that, so we'll see.
I see a lot of similarities between the Southwest and the Northeast, because you have guys that all have similar results against each other. They all have wins over each other, like you said, with Frenzy and Apello, and then you throw in Fairchild. The same thing with Lieben and Shaw, and then Ferraro and Fatoris. They're all very, very close. You could wrestle that same tournament 10 times, and you're going to get 4 different outcomes in 4 different spots. I would say in the Northeast, you could probably wrestle the same thing and have guys differently. Myers was a 1-point match from Braxton Apello. Apello and Frenzy have split a whole bunch of times. But the 2 constants, right? Dalton Perry is really good at wrestling, and Jacob Van D knows how to wrestle in Hershey. So when it's all said and done, I look at Dalton Perry, I'm like, man, who's going to beat him? Is it Carl Schindeldecker? Is it Maddox Shaw, who he's wrestled throughout his youth career? Van D, maybe he comes into this with a little fire. I mean, we've only seen him a handful of times this year. He wasn't at Powerade. He's only wrestled 18 matches coming into Hershey. That's not a whole heck of a lot. So, and he also draws a really, really crappy draw with Frenzy for him. I don't know which one says it's worse, but he's going to have to earn it, right? So 126 has all the makings for just a fun bracket that will go down in history as man, can you believe so-and-so won this? And can you believe you're going to look back on this 15 years later and say, man, that, so and so finished 6th in this bracket. That's crazy. I think that has the makings of it here. Let's move up to 132 pounds, because if we don't keep on moving forward, it'll be a 4-hour show, and Dustin will have to wake up for coffee or something. I don't know, maybe go to another birthday party. 132 is a pretty good bracket. And I say that kind of hesitantly because I didn't think 132 was a very deep weight coming into the year, and I didn't think it really showed a whole heck of a lot throughout the season. Mac Church was kind of the guy and has always been that guy, and I still think I still think he's going to come out and win a title here. But there's a lot of good wrestlers here that I think are going to stir up some things, and 2 freshmen are really part of that. Colin G from Quakertown and Colin Rath. They're not spelled the same and they don't wrestle the same, but they're both some super tough freshmen. Tom, you get to see both of them on a weekly basis. That top half, Mac Church, you've got Braden Bauer, who was number 2 in the state until he lost to Luke Simcox. Colin G from Quakertown, Colin Rath. Man, I like that. What are your thoughts on those 2 freshmen, Tom? Because you said it earlier, Colin Rath doesn't have any preparation problems. He's locked in. What do you think?
I like his chances better than Gay's, because he's got a lot more just raw power to go with the skill. They both are skilled as freshmen, but Rath just has that. He's like an animal. He's constantly going. His one weakness, if you can call it one, that I've seen since he made his debut in January, was that he struggles a little bit from bottom position. Brandon Kletzos at Notre Dame, a returning state runner-up in AA, he wrote him out to beat him 1-0. Now let's say that was Colin Rath's first varsity
match, right?
And it happens to be Bethlehem Catholic, Notre Dame, huge crowd, etc. Other than that, it's hard to find something wrong with Rath. I really like the way he just goes after people for 6 minutes. There are some similarities to how Kilkerry wrestled as a freshman at States to how Rath goes after you, and it's just, I could see him being in a position where Church, if those 2 face off in a semifinal, and Church takes him down 3-4 times, the match still isn't over because Rath is going to keep going, and he might turn that big move and turn the match around. Again, he's a freshman. You just never know what happens when the lights go on down there. But the fact that, Bethlehem Catholic team state champion, he's already experienced some of that. That helps a little bit. But there's still something about there when you're out there for yourself and the lights are on and you're facing guys who have got a ton of experience on those mats in a similar situation. So I like Rath to make it to the semifinals. I think Colin Gee of Quakertown has some really great years ahead of him. If he can get a medal out of this year, he's really doing a lot for where he's at in this bracket and against these guys. Again, it's amazing what happens when things happen at regionals where the guy who's supposed to win doesn't win, and then you get these loaded half brackets like Bauer up top.
Yeah.
That just further complicates it for these 2 freshmen, because it's just hard to kind of get to navigate your way through a tournament with guys this experienced, this talented, and to do it, against 3 or 4 of them, rather than just, okay, I got to beat this guy and I'm good. That's not the case here. So I think Rath is a really good chance of being a semifinalist, but he's going to have to wrestle the best he's wrestled so far to beat Mac Church or, Braden Bauer maybe, or somebody else, but he's going to have to wrestle really, really good. But he's one who's gotten better since the first time he hit the mat. He's really good.
Yeah, I mean, his first match, like you said, career match, Brandon Kletzos, who's, like you said, not too shabby, right? But that's his only blemish of the season thus far. The only wrestler in the weight, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, to have a win over Mac Church is Matt Repos. Those guys have wrestled 3 times in their career. Every single time it's been a 1-point match. And everybody remembers the caution that Matt Repos, he won against Mac Church. There was a caution call that ended up costing the match. Mac Church has won the last 2, but Dustin, man, like Matt Repos and Mac Church, let's see that one again, shall we?
Sign me up. Absolutely. They're close. And I would venture to say that Matt Repos right now is wrestling the best he's ever wrestled. And take away from that what you might. Didn't have a great postseason, didn't have a great state tournament last year. Was a little bit, he wasn't strong enough at 126 pounds. And what he did this offseason was he went out and he got a lot stronger. He changed his body tremendously. And you know that he's technical and he's skilled and all that. I think he's really made significant gains. And looking at the bottom half of the bracket, Luke Simcox beat him at Super Regionals last year because he was bigger and stronger. I mean, point blank. So I think Matt Repos has closed that gap a lot. And I like him to get out of the bottom half of this bracket. It's tough. I mean, he's going to have to go through some tough kids, including probably Luke Simcox. So I think the odds of seeing a Mac Church and Matt Repos final are pretty darn good. And it'll be interesting to see them. You know, we saw them team postseason last year. We saw them at 106 pounds a couple years ago. It'll be fun to see them at this new weight class because climbing up that ladder, I mean, the dynamic changes a little bit. But I look at, Mac Church has to go through likely Braden Bauer, likely Colin Raff to get to the finals. If he gets a second state title, he will have earned every single second of that. And I for one, Colin Raff is one of those rare freshmen who does not wrestle or carry himself like a freshman at all. I don't think he's going to be daunted by the stage. I don't think he's going to wrestle not to lose. I see him being aggressive throughout, and I think that's going to make him a real wild card in this bracket. I would not be surprised at all if he takes on Mac Church and beats Mac Church in the semis. I don't think I'd be bold enough to predict that, but he is absolutely the real deal. He's going to close his Bethlehem Catholic career with multiple state championships, I think. And I don't know if we can immediately rule out his freshman year as being a state champ.
That's Waynesburg folks aren't going to like you for that one, but I agree. He has all the makings for it. I would say this: Mac Church is wrestling better than I've ever seen him. He's opened up. His offense is go, go, go. I talked to him last night. He says, I run every day. His conditioning is great. His position. There's nobody in the state that has better mat awareness than Mac Church. I can't find anybody else who has better mat awareness. He always knows, where he's at on the mat. He always knows positionally where he needs to be. He's a savvy veteran now. So I will say, I think Mac Church is going to the finals, but look at what he did to Braden Bauer at the PIAA tournament. Wasn't close. He really dominated, I thought. I think Mac Church is obviously the guy that Colin Rath is shooting for, and I think he's going to give it. I think he's going to give it a really good, hard on. If they do actually meet, I think it's going to be a great match. But I look at that bottom half as seeing Matt Repos and Luke Simcox. Luke Simcox is wrestling better than he's ever wrestled before. And that was even considering when he beat Matt Repos last year. I think that's a semifinal, and I think that's going to be a hell of a one, to be honest with you. Chad Ozias, a state 8th place finisher last year, I think he's in the mix. But Repos, I saw him with you, Dustin, at South Central. He looked really, really poised, really good. Got a tech fall in the regional finals. Him and Luke Simcox, I'd love to see that one again, in addition to seeing Matt Repos and Mac Church again. There's a few matches, like the Colin Rath and Mac Church match, I want to see. Selfishly, I want to see that match. But there's a whole lot of other guys here. Tom, Aiden Rader, man, 31-16. Where did he learn? I don't get it. How? I explain that to me. I don't get it.
About 7 years ago, the first tournament I covered full-time, Nazareth had a kid who came into districts with a losing record. He gets through districts. He now has a 500 record, I think. He gets through regionals, and he's got like 18 losses. And I'm like, I'm asking the same question, like, how does this happen? How do you lose 18 times and you're in the state tournament? And the answer is he wrestles for Nazareth. Raiders just at that weight where they need somebody. He's a senior. He's kind of a little goofy and doesn't care if he's wrestling a freshman who was so talented as Rath. He just goes out and does whatever he can to give himself a chance. He's not afraid to take chances. He was thrown up against Rath or Kasak every time they wrestled Bethlehem Catholic, and his job was to not get pinned. And I'm telling you, he fought like crazy a couple of times and was successful to save the team a couple of points. That's the kind of kid he is. And now here he is. He gets, again, this is not the deepest weight in the Northeast, so he saw an opportunity and he took advantage of it. And again, he's not going to survive that bottom half. But to think that this kid, where he's come from, being a non-factor, non-starter, to now a senior with 30 wins, it's just nuts. But again, if you told me he wrestled anywhere else in District 11, I would probably say you're crazy, other than maybe Northampton.
Right.
But he's just typical Nazareth kid who doesn't have a lot of on his resume, but he doesn't care. So I'll go out and see what happens.
Well,
who knows?
that's and that's not a guy you want to wrestle, right? That's not a guy you want to match up against. Nazareth in general, I remember Sage Karam. He came in, I think, to regionals with a losing record. Ends up, coming close to a state tournament. Of course, he's doing pretty good right now. Aiden O'Shea from Belfont, I like him as well. I think that's a first good round matchup with Colin G. And I also like Ivan Vega. I got to see him a handful of times this year, and he doesn't give up. He's always battling. So, there's some guys that I think the outside of the quote big guns, like Mac Church, Matt Repost, Luke Simcox, and Colin Rath and Braden Bauer. I think there's those 6 to 8 range guys are going to be interesting to see how they all shake out. But overall, I think 32, it's just Mac Church is the guy that everyone's chasing, and we'll see if anyone can catch him. Let's go up to 138 pounds, much like Mac Church. And, 106 2 years ago. Look at all these guys here who are now doing big things in that weight. You had, Vinny Kilkeary, Jacob Van D, you have, Mac Church, obviously, Tyler Kasak. Briar Priest didn't make it to the state tournament. Jack Russo didn't make it to the state tournament. All these guys are all scattered now, and they're all just absolutely dominating. Tyler Kasak has been nothing but dominant this year. But 138, you heard it here first. Whew. It's not saying anything the obvious. It's a pretty loaded weight class with a lot of guys who I think are going to cause problems. Pearson Manville is one of those guys who I think is just, he's so hard to wrestle, man. I mean, he came out of the womb as a wrestler. I think he came out of the room with one of those Halo headgears on. The kid just straight up wrestles. And we saw it at the Escape to Rock Tom. Manville is right there. I think he's close. I like Lonzie Velma as well from Collinsville. Ali Alicia from Manheim Township. Colin Stone King was an absolute shootout match with Briar Priest. So this is the only weight where we have 2 wrestlers that both won the region and are both state champions in the same weight class. 138, Tyler Kasak won it last year. Briar Priest won it last year, beating Dylan Chappell. Tyler Kasak beat Carter Dybert. So two guys that had big wins in the finals. Now they're on separate sides. Landmines galore. Kelly Kakos and Colin Stone King, 2 guys that were state medalists last year. Dom Fendora, just a complete workhorse. I love the way he wrestles. Carter Davis, Nate Stone, good early round matchup. Tom, I'd like to know more about Brian Hurd from Abington Heights. I remember watching him when he was in youth. He's 34-7, was second in the Northeast region. He's wrestling pretty tough right now. And of course, Briar Priest down the bottom half, Jake Dune. Man, Tom, 138. There's a lot to be excited about here.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of drama. I really do. But I would be shocked if we're not talking about Kasak and Priest in the final. But this Hurd kid, again, I had never seen him wrestle before until this weekend. He looks like he's a freshman. He's built like a freshman, but you can see that he knows how to wrestle, except against Kasak, who takes apart most people. But you can see this kid, he's got a frame that he's going to be a really good 160-pounder real soon when he hits the weight room hard. Once he takes all this experience with him into next year, he was the one who I took away from the regionals being most impressed with a kid I had not seen before. He really looked good. Manhandled Jake Doon in the semis. Just, I was not surprised based on what I'd heard about Hurd, but he was every bit as good as what I had been told. And again, I think his time will come, but I wouldn't be surprised if he can win a couple of matches in the championship bracket. But again, we're talking, I think clearly another level when you talk about Briar Priest in that bottom half, and even Findora maybe. But and the way I've seen Kasak wrestle, I'm not sure anybody in that top half. I don't think if he wrestled them all in the one day, if somebody could beat him the way he's wrestling now. Now again, these are high school kids. They could, things change. Who knows? But he has gotten a little bit of that edge that I think we've seen Wrath wrestle with from day one, and he's kind of seen that in the wrestling room every day. So he's kind of developed that. I don't just want to beat you, and I don't even just want to pin you. I want to make you hurt. I want to make you remember 6 days from now why you're still hurting is because you wrestled me. Yeah. And he's really wrestled with that kind of attitude. Aiden Rader, it's amazing he can walk based on the meetings. He just would everything but pummel him into the ground, and the kid just never backed down. Now that's a credit to Rader, but Kasak, again, he's not looking to just beat you. He's looking to really put a pounding on you. And if he keeps up that attitude, which he's going to have to in that top half of the bracket, I think there's no doubt he's in the finals for sure.
And you look at the bracket, Dustin, I'm pulling it up on the screen now. But you look at the top half, it's clearly the better half. Kelly Keiko's state medalist, Colin Stone King state medalist, Ali Alicia, a guy who is a state qualifier. Lonzy Velma from Collinsville has 2 wins over Colin Stone King. Pearson Manville, beats Briar Priest in the Powerade tournament. Let's not forget that. Pearson Manville, he has a quality win over Briar Priest, and I really like that first round matchup here with him getting the winner of that Lonzy Velma and Ali Alicia. But you go down the bottom half, and I really think this is a Briar Priest and Dom Findora match. I not to discount all those other guys, but I think Dom Findora and Briar Priest are, I'm not going to say they're cruising, but I don't see a whole lot of roadblocks here. Dustin, would you kind of say that's the case here, or am I just crazy?
Well, you're crazy, and it's the case.
Okay,
hey, man.
Thank you.
Well, that's not an either or. That's a both. But the Findora and Priest are seniors who are on another level. And I don't think it's disrespect to the other guys there to say that those two are prohibitive favorites to get to that semifinal round. And I would expect a really good semifinal between them. I'd expect a really good semifinal between Kasak and Pearson Manville too. Yep. We've seen Kasak, these guys are pretty close. I think they both wrestle at M2 together whenever Tyler can make it his way up there. But Kasak beat Manville once. I would expect it to happen again. I feel like to piggyback off Tom, no disrespect to anybody else in this bracket, but I think Kasak is on another level from all of them. And that includes Briar Priest. That includes Dom Findora and Pearson Manville. I think very highly of Tyler Kasak for good reason, obviously. But I think this year he just looks like he's taken it to a whole new level. And if he doesn't end his career with 3 state titles, I will be very surprised.
Well, a guy who we know that can run through brackets, Carter Davis, didn't have a great South Central Regional, but boy, did he have a hell of an Ultimate Warrior tournament taking out guys left and right. He's somebody I don't want to see right out of the gate like Nate Stone, but he's got to wrestle better than he did at the South Central Regional. Eric Dominguez from Souderton, we talked about him, Kansas State champion. Here he is on the bottom half. If he beats Jake Doon, you get a date with Briar Priest. Welcome to Pennsylvania, right? So I'm excited to see how it all pans out because you're right. Tyler Kasak is here, and I'd say you got Briar Priest, Pearson Manville, Dom Findora, and another bracket tier, but you can't discount Colin Stone King. You can't discount Lonzy Velma. You can't discount Ali Alicia. And like Tom said with Brian Hurd, I mean, these are guys that I think just are going to show up to wrestle, and they're not going to care that it's Briar Priest or Tyler Kasak. But I will say, Tom, all sense is pointing towards a Briar Priest, Tyler Kasak finals, and that should be a good one. It's the only one that we could see two returning state champions go head-to-head. 145, another returning state champion. That's Finn Solomon. He won an absolute barn burner against Ty Waters, ultimate tiebreaker match. Man, that was worth the price of admissions. I don't care if every other match was boring. Watch that match. That was just one of the best matches of the tournament. I'll put the bracket up here on the screen. So Finn Solomon at the top, Nick Foster, Nazareth. You know, he gets second in the Northeast region, Tom, and he gets a date with Riley Bauer, returning state medalist, going to Bucknell along with his brother, Braden. Michael Trainer, Dustin, from Octorara. Had a great tournament, winning some big matches there. Griffin Walliser from Central Mountain, the sophomore that's finally breaking through. You know, you can see looking at his record, he's had some bumps, but he's battle tested. Chance Babb from Boyertown, another guy who's just been around forever. I'm not going to look past Drake Burford. He can pin just about anybody, anywhere, anytime. But on the top half, I like that Bauer and Foster match. I think that's going to be a really good first round matchup. I think Trainer and Walliser should be a good first round matchup as well. Although if Trainer wrestles like he did in the South Central Regional, I think he wins it. Drake Burford, don't sleep on him. Guy can either get pinned or he can pin somebody. Him and Austin Smith should be a good one. But you go down to the bottom. Andrew Harmon from Bethlehem Catholic is back. He's healthy. I like the way he's been wrestling recently, but boy, this guy right here, Ty Waters, watch out for him. You know, 2 years ago, he beat Mac Church at 106 pounds in the section tournament, ends up being a state qualifier. Last year, breaks his knee at Powerade. He's out. Now he's up at 145. He and Finn Solomon split matches before that finals match. I really like Ty Waters. If you guys haven't had a chance to see him, go watch some film on him because he's fun, he's funky, and that was a hell of a match last night. But then you also have Mohammed Sazarinov from Council Rock South, who he and Regan Lefevre have wrestled before. Lefevre has a win over him. They wrestled at the Hurricane Classic. And then there's a guy that many people probably have never heard of. His name's Jude Swisher. You know, he kind of has a podcast. He's really active on social media. Jude Swisher's down there in the bottom half. I love this bracket because it's not really, you can't say one side stacked versus the other. I think this is a very well-balanced bracket with a lot of different opportunities for this one to go different ways. Jude Swisher, let's not forget, has a win over Finn Solomon this year. You know, that to me is a big indicator of where he's at. But Finn Solomon, physically a different wrestler than he was back earlier this year. He was a little bit undersized for the weight. He looks stronger and leaner at this weight now. I'm excited. Guys. Tom, we'll go to you first to see what are your thoughts here at 145 pounds.
Well, with Harmon, it's almost an advantage for him that he missed a good portion of the year because he was never the strongest kid. But in rehabilitating his ankle, he got a lot stronger, and he has shown it. Again, he has manhandled Foster once. He's beaten up Fritz multiple times. He's just strong. He has admitted that last year in the postseason, he may not have been the worst wrestler in the bracket, but he was the weakest wrestler. This year, he's felt like he's been stronger against everybody he's wrestled. So that is a huge difference for him. You could tell he's a much more confident wrestler because he knows he can get in some positions and not be in huge trouble. But for him to say that he's going to beat Ty Waters and Jude Swisher to get to a final that with potentially Finn Solomon, that's a big ask. But I think he's the only threat. I think he's the biggest threat to those two on the bottom half of the bracket. There's no question about that. He has really looked good. Again, Nick Foster, I don't think scores enough. Confidence, again, a big deal with him. Again, here's a senior. Really, this is his first full year starting. He's had all kinds of situations that have kind of stunted his development. But he's a real nice kid. He's a real talented kid. But that to get Bauer right off the bat, and then you're looking at Finn Solomon. That's a lot to ask of somebody who just doesn't have that kind of big tournament experience more than anything. But I mean, there's just I'm pretty confident in the four we talked about at 138. Here, I think there's a couple guys that could, again, down the bottom, you've got Swisher and Waters. I don't know. You
Yep.
know, I don't know. That's, if they wrestle 3 times, you're going to get, 3 different types of matches. You just don't know. And, you can't discount Bauer up top, but I mean, it's hard to bet against Finn Solomon coming out of that top half of the bracket. And, again, whoever comes out of the bottom, it's going to be a great final. But I think here we've got like 5 kids for those top 4 spots that we can pretty much hone in on.
You look at Waters, Swisher, and Solomon. Obviously, I think those guys are all pretty equally matched. Shane Kibler from Abington has a win over Michael Trainer this year, but I think you're right. You look at it when it comes down to brass tacks. You have those top guys like Finn Solomon and Jude Swisher. Ty Waters is I don't think he's too far, right? Obviously, he was an ultimate tiebreaker, loss away from being a regional champion and things being very different. So this one's exciting because I like those 3. I like Harmon, and I like some of the other guys in the bracket. But there's going to be a lot of fireworks here early and often at 145 pounds. Dustin's getting tired. We got to pick up the pace. Dustin, I know you got to. I know. Do you want me to read you a bedtime story after this? I'll do it. 152 is pretty wide open because there's not a guy here that I'm saying, yes, this is the guy we're definitely, hunting here. Dylan Evans has been really, really good this offseason. Was 3rd in Fargo, placed at Super 32, just really knocked down a lot of doors. But, he's had some setbacks. He's had some injuries. Dom Frontino, same thing. Had some great strengths and some good performances, but had some setbacks at the South Central Regional. I don't think he looked great. Luke Sipes, a freshman, 33-1. His only loss, Jude Swisher. So the kid can wrestle. Luke Sipes has a win over Caden Dobbins, who won the South Central Regional. He's obviously legit. Jack Pletcher, he's likely going to feed right into Dylan Evans. Jack Pletcher and Dylan Evans, that's going to be a close match. And then, of course, you have Kellen Laffey on the bottom half, who was number 1 in the state for much of the year because of that win over Dylan Evans. William Morrow from North Penn, 2nd out of the Southeast region, returning state medalist. But Dagan Condomiti from Northampton. Tom, was there any more dominating wrestler in Northeast other than Condomiti? I mean, he mopped mat with everybody.
Yeah, he's, again, not the deepest weight class up in the Northeast, but he made it look ridiculously easy. I joked with him a couple times, like, you even have to shower today. I mean, it's just he wasn't out there long enough to do anything. His pre-match routine was probably more intense, but he has really elevated his game, and he was motivated tremendously by his loss in last year's first round state tournament. Really, still eats at him that he thinks he should have won. Right. It's like, wait a minute, this is your first trip down here. You're wrestling a guy who's on 3 levels higher than you, but he didn't wrestle like that. He just ran out of gas, didn't have the experience that really cost him. And I think nothing has motivated him more than that match. And the way he reacted, in the consolations after that, he didn't, he finished 7th, which was a huge disappointment for him. But he's really taken everything he could from his older brother. He's even gone to Nebraska and gotten some workouts in just to stay sharp. His best matches have been, non-PIAA matches.
Yep.
They're still with his brother and some other people, but he said, clearly, he said, I still think I'm the best kid at this weight, and I'm going to prove it. So he's going to have his chance. I'm not one to doubt him. I just want to see him wrestle really good kids, 3 or 4 matches like that in a row. He hasn't had that. He was banged up, had a car accident, escaped the rock. He said, I couldn't take a shot. He said he was all cut up, his knees, his arms, he was in bad shape, still finished 2nd, escaped the rock. So I guess that shows a little bit about his toughness, but I'm going to be anxious to see. Again, he's like his brother. He can wrestle for an hour. The question is, after 6 minutes, is he going to be winning? And as Jagger had shown us for 2 years, he's got a flair for the dramatic. It seems like it's okay. I guess I better get going now, even though I'm wearing this guy down. Well, I only have a couple seconds left, and Jagger, his semi and state final last year were pretty dramatic. I don't think we're going to see Dagan resort to that. He doesn't. He's got another another gear than his brother does in terms of mentality. I think he's another one who has that twinkle in his eye. It's like, I really want to pound you.
Yeah.
And I'll do it quickly, but I want to pound you. And he's done a lot of that. I'll be anxious to see if he could keep that up this weekend.
I mean, you almost beat Wyatt Henson last year, and you then end up finishing 7th. I know he wasn't happy about that, but I think momentum is huge in this weight class, and Condimenti and Evans have the momentum right now. I see them on a collision course. Laffey, his shoulders wrapped up. I just don't know if he's 100% healthy, and I think losing that match to Evans, I think maybe sets him back a little bit. But Condimenti just flying high coming in here. Dustin, you've seen a lot of these wrestlers this year. What do you make of 152, and can anyone really top those two guys that we have been talking about?
I would agree. I would call that a collision course. I mean, for Dylan Evans to have beaten Kellen Laffey last week, that's a really good jolt of momentum going into this week. That top half of the bracket is his to lose, I think. But you're gonna have to go through probably Jack Pletcher and Dom Frontino or Jake Daly is an interesting test in the quarterfinals. If Luke Sipes can make his way through, we'll see. And by the way, Tom, to see all these Nazareth kids with 12, 13, 14 wins, you talk to coaches and coaches are like, I'm trying to get opportunities to get my kids losses. Well, Dave Kroll has taken that to just a ridiculous level because all these guys are really, really good. But I think it has a way of there's so many of these Nazareth kids who aren't even close to being favorites in their weight classes. A handful of them are going to make some noise, because they've been through the ringer this year. I don't know if that's Dominic Wheatley. Maybe he gets out of round one. Maybe he uses that experience and can beat Luke Sipes. I mean, he's capable of making some noise here too. But ultimately, Dylan Evans has been here before. He seems to be peaking at the right time. Same thing with Condimenti. We'll see if Kellen Laffey can kind of make some noise. You've seen Caden Dobbins. You've seen Laffey. If Caden Dobbins makes it into the quarterfinal rounds, can he beat Kellen Laffey?
I mean, I think he can. Yeah, I mean, he wrestled really well at the South Central Regional, and I think these guys aren't separated by a whole lot, and we're going to talk about that at 160. But these guys aren't. There's not a whole lot of separation between them. So yeah, I absolutely do think he could beat them.
And I think Caden Dobbins won the South Central Regional, which, by the way, Caden Dobbins, Dominic Frontino, Griffin Gonzalez, JT Hogan, put them in a blender and one of them comes out, they're almost the exact same guy, all four. That weight class in the South Central, for better or worse, there just wasn't a lot of separation there. I don't know how that plays out in this one, but Dobbins earned it, and he did it with the top position. He beat a state qualifier in Gabe Belga in the semifinals at regionals because he turned him in the final seconds. He was on top with a 1-0 lead against Dom Frontino in the third period and held him down really without much dramatics in the finals there. And he earned it. Now, can that top position win him a match or two along the way? Here, we'll see.
Let's go up to 160 pounds, and I'll put the bracket up on the screen here. Jared Kessler on top, and man, this is we could potentially see a 1 versus 2. Now these rankings are gonna change because this is what they were coming into the regional tournament. But Matt Collegesi loses in the finals of Southeast Regional. He was number 1 in the state. Kessler was number 2. They're obviously gonna change, but Kessler, man, he's very much poised. He looks like he's just locked and loaded in. I don't see anyone stopping him in this weight class. I really don't. I don't think Collegesi is gonna stop him. I don't think anyone else in the bracket is going to stop him. But you have some other guys here like Enzo Merlacci from Kiski area, who I really am a big fan of. Him and Macon Myers, I think, is going to be a great first-round matchup. And I think the winner there has a good chance of maybe getting Kyler Everly from Mifflin County, who I think has been up and down this year. He has a win over Ryan Garvick from Central Dauphin, who I think is peaking right now. So, in the top half, I think Jared Kessler, it's Jared Kessler's all day. I really, and that's not to discount Matt Collegesi, but Kessler's just wrestling lights out right now. He's healthy, he's strong, and I think he's just locked and loaded. On the bottom half, Ryan Garvick, I think he's peaking at the right time, but he's going to be tested. Sean Taylor, I'm a huge Sean Taylor fan. I think this kid is only as a sophomore, like Garvik, has went leaps and bounds this year, and I think he has a very legitimate shot of potentially, making out to the semifinals, maybe in the finals. Landon Muth is also there on the bottom half. Chase Barlow, who had that win over Matt Collegiesi, 32-2, and Chase Kranitz, a returning state medalist. He's a guy who has been there before. He's a little banged up, but he gets hot. He's going to be winning some matches here. So, Tom, I'll start with you. But what are your thoughts on 160 and the Northeast region? Maybe a little bit. I would say Ryan Fairchild is definitely peaking at the right time, but he's on a top half that's really stacked.
Yeah, he for winning a regional title, he got a really bad couple of potential matchups here. Love the kid. He's as strong as an ox. But he's just kind of figuring out that when coaches give him instruction, whether it's in practice or on the mat, you should probably listen to him. He basically said, until like the last month, I didn't listen to anybody. And now that he's kind of understood some things, I mean, Muth abused him the first 3 times they met last year, and now he's beaten him 2 weeks in a row, in postseason pressure situations that, he didn't have a whole lot of experience to draw on. But again, he's in a tough spot. Muth is one of those kids who I imagine, and I'm just speculating, he must be one of those kids that drives Jeff Karam crazy because he's got an awful lot of ability. He can score a lot of points, but for whatever reason, when we get to the third period, he doesn't have anything in the gas tank. And then we've talked about that with some other kids earlier in some of the earlier brackets. If he can wrestle 6 minutes the way he wrestles the first 2 or 3, I could tell you he's going to come out of the bottom half of the bracket, but I have not seen that from him. So that's a lot to ask for 3 matches for him to get to the final. He just, again, he's one of those kids. He kind of can be a little frustrating because, and again, he's not a bad kid. He just, for whatever reason, he struggles to go 6 minutes. And if you can't go 6 minutes in a bracket this balanced, you're not going to get very far. So.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And Dustin, Ryan Garvik has been really good, but he's in a bracket on the bottom half that has just, like you said, landmines everywhere. Sean Taylor, Landon Muth, Barlow, and Kranitz. Is the Ram going to be able to have a chance to get through?
I mean, if he carries what he did at the regional tournament here, and I think it was a mindset thing as much as anything, Ryan Garvik has the ability to kind of scramble out of sticky situations, but he also had a certain bit of complacency that allowed himself to keep getting in those sticky situations. And what he did last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, was attack and set the tone with his offense. If that's something he's able to continue doing at the state tournament, I think there's a lot of different scenarios on the table for the bottom half of this bracket. Tom, to your point, Ryan Fairchild not listening to his coaches. In his defense, he does have a young, spry, fresh-faced rookie there in Dave Kroll, who is still trying to claw and earn respect from a lot of people in your area there. So I give Ryan Fairchild a little bit of a pass.
I'm surprised you weren't
there.
Struck down by lightning. That's like you're like the Antichrist saying that. My God.
I think Dave would just be flattered that he was called young and spry in that one statement more than anything. But obviously he's not a inexperienced coach. But to see Chase Kranitz have to come from a pigtail match is wild to me. And to see, the chase on chase crime potentially in round 1 with Barlow and Kranitz, that'll be a really good match there too. And I think, I don't know what's going to happen between Landon Muth and Roman Marone, who's Mitch Rupert's favorite wrestler from Williamsport.
He does love him. Yeah.
He does. Sean Taylor's a wild card.
I love
Ryan
Sean
Garvik's
Taylor. I'm a Sean Taylor fan.
If one of these guys catches fire, a lot of different things can happen on the bottom half of this bracket. You would expect, Kessler's got to go through Collegiesi. You seem pretty confident that's Kessler's match to lose, and I would agree with you there too. But the top half has a little bit more predictability, I think, to it. I think the bottom half could be some fireworks.
Yeah, I would agree with Dustin. It's less predictable than the top half. I am locked in on Jared Kessler. Collegiesi has, I feel like he struggled at times, and I think it came back to bite him against Chase Barlow. But I think Kessler's just he's locked and loaded, ready to go. So 160 going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to see a lot of young guys do well here. Muth Jr., Sean Taylor sophomore, Garvik a sophomore. There's not a whole lot of seniors other than your guys like Kessler, Collegesi, Everly, Merlacci. So yeah, it's 160 going to be a lot of fun as we've kind of said about much of the weight classes. Now 172. It really starts to, we talked about how loaded some of these are. I would say 172 outside of Rocco Welsh. Rocco Welsh has been, let's not forget, he won his first WPIAL title yesterday. He never won a WPIAL title. He lost to AHR. He lost to Curtis Phipps, two-time state runner-up. I don't think there's anybody that's going to stop him this year. But if there is one guy, it may be Tucker Hogan. Dustin, we love ourselves some Tucker Hogan. He's on I'd say he's got a pretty favorable draw, but I think he's going to see Matt Furman early on. I think Tucker should win that, but Furman's a guy who, 8 of his losses, I think 4 of them all come to Rocco Welsh. You have guys like Dom DiAugustino from Interboro, who's also on the bottom half. I really like him. He was on our True Power card. He got a win over Jake Jones from Saucon Valley. So, the top half, I think it's Rocco Welsh's all day. I'm not going to say he's walking through, but I don't think he's going to have too much of an issue on the bottom half. I like Tucker Hogan. I like Matt Furman. I like Mark McGonigal as well, or Mark McGonigal from Clearfield, and Dom DiAugustino. But outside of Welsh, Dustin, is the top man himself, Tucker Hogan, going to be able to, give any issues?
Well, he's going to be challenged every step of the way. Matt Furman likely in the quarterfinals. But Tucker Hogan, his ability to finish matches from the top position, one of those guys, rare guys who even against high-level competitors, he's so long. Can win from the top, can end matches from the top position, can get a cradle at will. And it's rare. And I think you're probably going to see that at some point along the way here. He's such a long kid. He's a matchup issue for everybody. Dom DiAgostino, really experienced kid himself, 6th place finisher last year. He's been to the state tournament. This will be his 3rd time there. That'll be a likely interesting matchup in the semis. And I don't know. Rocco Welsh, Kevin Oliveria might be it'll be an interesting matchup, but his power, explosiveness, and mat position is such a tough combination. And to your point earlier, he's kind of conquered some new frontiers this year of not being an also-ran, not being a silver medalist at tournaments, but he's winning tournaments. I think he's gotten over the hump. It certainly helps to get Herrera Rondon out of the way. And it's been his biggest obstacle so many times. And so he's now the man to beat here. I think he deserves it. I will point out, and this is a kid from my backyard, but if Cole Bartram comes to wrestle, there's a path for him to get to the semifinals. I don't see anybody in that little pod who I think he absolutely cannot beat.
No,
but he's got to come out and be aggressive.
I don't think I agree. He's got to come to wrestle, but Waylon Whaler from St. Mary's is he won a very deep 172-pound bracket from the Northwest region. I like him a lot. I think he's very good. And boy, I like Luke Thomas. That's a great transition to Tom. Luke Thomas has been a great story. I think he's probably one of the most improved wrestlers in the entire state. And all he does is win. And here he is sitting on the top half here. I think he has a chance to make it to the semifinals.
He does. And he's one of those kids who has shown me in a couple of matches in particular this year that he's got a little bit of heart. He can go 6 minutes and he doesn't quit. He's been behind in a couple of matches. I thought, okay, well, this is going to find out what he's about, and he found his way to win them. Those are big confidence boosters for him, and I think if he doesn't get caught up in the spotlight, they've wrestled there at team states, but it's a different animal when you're out there for yourself. But he seems to be more confident at this point right now than he was 2 months ago. He's got skill. The question is, is he strong enough and quick enough to handle guys at this weight? Because most of the time he's been quicker than the guys he's wrestled, but he's going to run into some guys who are just as quick and stronger than him, and it's how he kind of handles that combination. And I don't think he's seen a lot of that, especially recently. So this will be a big test for him. But I think that he's got a chance to grab a medal for sure. Now, can he win 3 to get? I don't know. He's not getting to the final, but that would be a monster accomplishment. But he's definitely got it in him. He could find his way to third place match without me being shocked by that. But again, he's going to have to wrestle his best. He's not at the deepest weight class where he's coming from, but he's a kid who's shown some heart, and that has a lot to do with it sometimes.
Yeah, big time. And looking at some of these other guys, Merrick Seaman from Westchester Ruston, injured, comes back. He's at 172. Has a good match with Dom DiAugustino in the finals of the Southeast Regional. I like him as well. Cole Bartram, Connor Jacobs. Connor Jacobs has done really well for himself in the postseason. Matt Furman's a guy who I think gets forgotten about a lot. I think he's a guy that people overlook, and I'm not quite sure why, because he's been pretty consistent in his 3 years at Canon Mac. So Caleb Marzoloni from Abington Heights, a young sophomore, 32-2 on the year. I thought had a good Northeast region, although, like you said, albeit it's not the deepest there. 172, Rocco Welsh is the guy. Tucker Hogan's only loss on the season was to Nolan Lear of Benton, and and Nolan Lear got pinned in the first period by Rune Lawrence, who Rocco Welsh has beaten 3 times. So, I mean, transitive property. I think. I like Tucker Hogan a lot, and I think he's competitive, but Rocco Welsh is just, if he wrestles like he's been wrestling, I don't think it's much. So 189 though, ladies and gentlemen, this may be the biggest crime of the tournament here, but we kind of all saw it coming. Quinn Collins of Central Bucks East is on the top, 39-1. He won the Southeast region. On the bottom half is Sonny Sasso, 42-0, a returning state medalist. But unfortunately, you got maxed out from Mount Lebanon, a senior, 38-0 on the bottom half. It's funny because Sammy Sasso was on the same side as Luke Pletcher. They wrestled, I think, in the quarterfinals of the state tournament one year when that was clearly the finals. And, I'm not discounting Quinn Collins, because Quinn Collins is he's really good. But you have 2 undefeated, nationally, top 5 guys on the bottom half. It just leaves a sour taste in your mouth. Tom, you and I talked about it before the show, and it's not what you want for the fans.
No. And again, how do you ignore a guy who's been a state champion? I don't care when it happened. We've seen it's not only this weight class. We know what's happening in AA with a 2-time state champ. It's just silly. The guy won a state title. He obviously beat really good kids to do it, and the fact that he got hurt he shouldn't be penalized. And yet he's being penalized, or Sasso, depending on who doesn't win. This should be the final. And I don't know what the system is to fix it, but this is happening multiple times. It's got to stop. Again, it dates back to the older Sasso. It's just silly. And these 2 guys are head and shoulders above most everybody else in this bracket. And it would be an upset if either one of them lost to anybody else in this tournament. Right. Whether, whoever loses in the semifinal drops, whoever beats, if someone else beats him, it's a huge upset. And again, I've seen Collins wrestle. He's really good. But now you have these 2 guys who are above him. And now he gets that path to the final. And again, not to discount Shoemaker or anybody else up top, but I just don't see it happening. But it's a shame that this isn't going to be a final. I don't want to say too much, but it's just Sasso. I mean, he did get taken down 3 times in the semifinal at regionals. I don't think he was taken down 3 times all year.
Right.
But he was taken down 3 times in about 45 seconds, and then 10 seconds later he won by pin. So he's really good. I didn't think he would be this good this year. He has just train wrecked everybody. I felt bad for some of Wayne McIntyre is a really good kid, a really good wrestler, but the last 2 years he just has run into Sasso, I think, 5 times, and it's just not been close. I feel bad for the kid. He's trying to make more history there at his program. First one to make it to the state tournament to begin with, and now if he can get a medal, that'd be even greater. But again, Sasso and Stout, it's just a shame.
It's Sasso. Well, first of all, I can't believe the disrespect you put to Lenny Pinto. Max Stout lost in the state finals to Lenny Pinto, and I mean, you of all people, shame on you, Tom.
I know, a slip of the tongue.
Slip of the tongue. I know.
And
but I had you don't do it much, so I had to do it.
Well, and there were some people who didn't think he was pinned, but again,
well, you're right. There are some folks out there, but it was.
So my train might have been
boy, that was a fun match. Sonny Sasso and Dagan Condomiti, I think, are both two guys that have made significant jumps considering where they finished in the state tournament last year. Both those guys, I just think, have turned the page. So I would agree with you. Sonny Sasso, Max Stout in the semifinals, likely could be a finals. I mean, the top half, Johnny Miller from Exeter is a pretty darn good wrestler, and Dustin and I talked to him last 2 weeks ago, and he wrestled Sonny Sasso the first weekend of the year at the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic. He was a medalist at the Super 32 tournament, which we know is not an easy task. I think Johnny Miller and Quinn Collins could be one hell of a semifinals. Trey Shoemaker has been very consistent for Mifflin County, but Johnny Miller, I just think, I like him, and I think him and Quinn Collins could be a really good match. Dustin, what are your thoughts on 189?
Well, I mean, this is the weight class of all weight classes that you're going to hold up, and you're going to use this against the way that these brackets are constructed, and it is absolutely fair. You look at their resumes and what kind of feeds into seeding criteria. Max Stout and Sonny Sasso have 2 state medals between them for a host of reasons, but they're 2 examples of guys who can fall between the cracks whenever you're using this system. And I think unless you add a common sense layer or a new filter to that, which I'm not sure is happening anytime soon, you're going to continue having situations like this. Everything about these guys screams they are nationally ranked, nationally relevant 189 pounders, but their body of work, again, for a host of reasons, doesn't really scream the same thing. So anyway, these are whoever comes out of the bottom wins the weight class. I mean, that's just kind of point blank. It would be stunning if that's not what happens. I love Johnny Miller. I think that semifinal on the top is going to be a great match. Johnny Miller is not the biggest 189 you'll ever see. But he's able to use what he has to his advantage, and he comes at you for 6 minutes. He told us last week, pace very important to what he does. Something that, he was pretty competitive against Sonny Sasso, which it looked like in that match, it looked like a 285 versus a 106 at some point because the size discrepancy there. But really like Johnny Miller. I think he's got a really good shot to get to the finals here. That semifinal against presumably Quinn Collins, if they both make it there, will be, I think, the only bit of drama as to who represents the top half of the bracket. All eyes are going to be on that semifinal because it's a state final, and both of those guys are deserving of being state champions. Yeah. But it just sucks that one of them can't be, and one of them won't even be in the finals.
Yeah, it really is. And, we could spend a couple hours just talking about the flaws in the system, but, we know that's what it is. Max Stout and Sonny Sasso, both undefeated, both guys that are just, way above some of the other guys here. And, Max Stout, he was a Powerade champion, but he got pushed. You go back and watch that match in the Powerade finals against Jude Carrera from Wyoming Seminary. He was pushed. Sonny Sasso, as Tom mentioned, was taken down a couple times. And, both guys the styles are very different. Sonny is he's not Sammy, but he certainly has a kind of a different style. Max Stout is a very, I would call, traditional wrestler, and he's very good at small things and just positionally and just hand fighting. I think he's one of the best hand fighters in the state, to be honest with you. Sonny Sasso, on the other hand, he's just one of the best physically able to be in some positions and scramble out of them and pinners. My gosh, I don't know if there's a better pinner out there than Sonny Sasso. So yeah, 189, maybe the crime of the century, but that top half, Dustin, as you mentioned, Johnny Miller, Quinn Collins, definitely 2 guys that I'm looking to potentially get to the finals. Not discounting anybody else there. I don't want to get any hate mail saying you didn't talk about Brody Evans or Trey Shoemaker. I'm not saying that none of those guys have a chance, but Johnny Miller, Super 32 medalist, that puts some respect on your name. 215 pounds. Carl DiGiorgio from Central Bucks West is on the top. And also on the top is a two-time state medalist, Cole Waitman from Bell Vernon. Let's not forget that a few years ago he was in the state semifinals against Dorian Crosby in a pretty loaded weight class. But another I'm pretty disappointed just because you have a top bracket here that's just so stacked. DiGiorgio and Nick Pavlechko from State College, they wrestled in the Escape the Rock finals. Tom, you were there, you saw it. Pavlechko was able to come out with a win, which propelled him to a number 1 ranking there. DiGiorgio, but he had never made it to the state tournament last year. He didn't make it out of the regional tournament last year. So DiGiorgio, being a state medalist, is also there. Sam Rodriguez. Tom, what do you make of the top half of this 215-pound bracket?
Well, I like those two guys to be semifinalists for sure. I think I had not seen Pavlechko wrestle until Escape the Rock, and I was pretty impressed. Again, just had some composure in a couple of situations I thought it could have gone awry for him. And he's got talent, but he's got some ability to think on his feet, and in certain situations I was really impressed with that. Again, it's just so frustrating when you see, in many eyes, two of the best kids in the state, and yet they're not going to meet in the final. And again, we got a lot down top. I mean, fair down the bottom. Finnerty, really good. We'll do that later, but it's just frustrating to see two guys meet so early in the tournament. But we know it'll be a very good match. So that's the one good thing we have to look forward to, is that we're going to see two kids that are going to really put on a good 6-minute show.
And I would even say, looking at the first round matchups, Corey Barrero from Greater Latrobe, I mean, he was third in a pretty deep Southwest region. Him and Pavlechko should be a really good match. And I'm not just saying Pavlechko is going to walk into the semifinals, because Borio is we've seen him. He beat Lucas Doyle a couple times this year. He's had some close matches with Finnerty. They've been 1-point tiebreaker matches there. Cole Waitman, same thing. He's just not in wrestling shape. He's only wrestled 11 matches this year. So he's just not quite where he was 2 years ago or last year when he made it to the state tournament and defaulted to the 8th place position. Sam Rodriguez from Gettysburg, Dustin and I, talked at length about him and his development and his just confidence and peaking at the right time. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him come out and end up getting into the quarterfinals and maybe the semifinals. The bottom half, wide open. Chase Levy has been the guy, but let's not forget, him and Brian Finnerty are both 189-pounders that are wrestling 215, right? Chase Levy and Brian Finnerty. And you saw the Finnerty match. Him and Cole Waitman looked it was almost like Sonny Sasso and Johnny Miller. They're very different size-wise. Chase Levy, it hasn't quite caught up to him yet. He was in the Northeast region. 215 wasn't very deep, so he didn't really he didn't have his size exploited. But and Brian Finnerty, same thing. I think he's gonna have a harder time with some bigger guys like Travis Armstrong or Anson Wagner, or even Lucas Doyle. To be honest with you, Lucas Doyle is Lucas' brother Joey. I mean, he's huge. Dustin, Sam Rodriguez, what do you think? Is this guy going to win a state title or what?
Well, listen, I think you've got him ranked number 9 after he won the South Central Regional. And I think without a doubt that particular weekend, he wrestled like a top 5 guy. And I think there's just a little bit of hesitation to really view him as more than that right now, just because of the full body of work. But when he's rolling and when he's confident and when he's at his best, Chris Haynes said that he believes he's a Division I caliber wrestler. And I think, he's longer than most 215s. So that's something that'll be an interesting storyline to follow there. But, looking at that little cluster with Pavlechko, Hurd as a freshman last year, now he's ranked number 1 in the state and just doesn't get a lot of love from the formula, which is why he's wrestling the number 6 kid in the state in round 1, wrestling a tough, probably Sam Rodriguez, who, I think if just looking at the rankings at this weight, anywhere from, I don't know, I mean, anywhere from 2 or 3 all the way down to 10. You could shuffle these guys around on any given weekend.
Yeah,
It was
and I
the same
did.
was true at the same was true at the South Central Regional where it was very unpredictable. You have the same dynamic in play here. So Pavlechko really has his work cut out for him to get to the finals at all. And because he'll have to go through DeGiorgio. He beat DeGiorgio. That's what propelled him to number 1, right?
Yes, it did. Yeah, he beat him at Escape the Rock.
But even DeGiorgio, like Jose Garcia before the regional was unbeaten and ranked number 5. Didn't have a great tournament, and now he's wrestling a pigtail against Mason Hale, who's a pretty solid kid too. I mean, there's just not a lot of shoe-ins for any position here, especially when you factor in that the number 1 kid in the state really got a pretty rotten draw.
Yeah, well, yeah, rotten's a good way to put it. Tom, we talked about Brian Finnerty being undersized, but he was still able to find a way to win. Chase Levy, same thing, 189-pounder, wrestling up at 215. How much does that affect him? And, up to this point, it really hasn't, but he wrestles like a guy like Liam Volkklaas or Troy Peterson, and then a Ryan McMillan or John Pardo. Both of those guys are all full of 215 pounds. Is that going to catch up with him?
Well, I think that's a big question. I think he had some issues at Beast of the East because of that. He ran into some bigger kids, and he's a strong kid, but he's also got a kid who's had shoulder surgery. He weighs 15, 20 pounds less than most of the guys he faced at Beast of the East. He eventually caught up to him. I don't know if he can do that for 3 days against everyone who will be bigger than him unless he faces Finnerty. I mean, that's just that's a fact. I mean, I've watched guys. There's several guys we've had in our region in AA and AAA who were incredibly undersized for some of these upper weights, and it eventually catches up to them at some point in some big tournament. So for one of those 2 guys to navigate their way through that bottom half of the bracket, going up against guys, everyone who's bigger than them, unless they face each other, it's going to be really a real challenge. I mean, that's a real grind. You're not going to get 45-second pin and get away from a match and stay fresh. You're going to be stuck with 6-minute matches, and it's going to be a real grind. He's a tough kid. He's real strong, but that's a big ask.
Dustin, I'll echo what you said about shuffling between like a 2 and a 12. Like, I mean, honestly, just obviously I do the rankings every week, and those switched up and changed so much because 215 was just one of those weight classes where you had guys beating other guys and some results that just didn't make sense, right? Two of the first round matches I'm really looking forward to: Anson Wagner, Travis Armstrong. Travis Armstrong from Central Dauphin East. He is a man. I mean, he threw Ryan McMillan down like it was nothing. It's just, hey, can he put it together, right? This is a huge test for him. And then obviously Borio and Pavlechko, 1 versus 5 in the first round. That's an exciting matchup. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one. But 215, I mean, outside of DeGiorgio and Pavlechko, I wouldn't be surprised if we had 4 different guys come out from the bottom, whether it's Finnerty, Wagner, Armstrong, McMillan, Levy. I don't know. Lucas Doyle is pretty tough, and you just don't know. So I think 215's it's been such a highlighted weight this year because the top 20 are all really good. I think they're all really solid wrestlers, and we're starting to see that kind of pan out here in the postseason. Like you said, Dustin, Jose Garcia, undefeated 3 weeks ago, he was the number 5 guy in the state. DeGiorgio was number 2. That's a top 5 matchup in the first round. So a lot to look forward to at 215, which we don't always say, right? Sometimes it's just like, 215, right? Same with heavyweight. Heavyweight, I would say the same thing because you go up to heavyweight, and my gosh, we have a lot of good wrestlers here and a lot of good first round matches. We'll look at the top right away. Sean Kinney, returning state second, was about 1.5 inches away from winning a state title last year. But Nate Schoen has some superhuman strength that he's able to throw a 275-pound wrestler off of him. Frederick Redder from Quakertown, really good match in the finals with LaVenture from Upper Darby, loses that one. So he's rewarded with Noah Tustin in the first round from Waynesburg, a guy who's just really excelled since moving up from 215 to heavyweight. I love that first round matchup between Redder and Noah Tustin, with the winner going against Sean Kinney. Now, Sean Kinney did wrestle Noah Tustin at the team state tournament and really put it on him once he got warmed up. Charles Cruz, another Mitch Rupert favorite from Williamsport, won a deep Northwest Regional. He gets a very hot Stone Joseph right now, who's making his first trip to the state tournament. Trevor Gallagher, also there from Gettysburg, kind of won a weird weight class there where Lane Schmick ended up finishing third there. Sean Kinney, Redder, Tustin, Cruz, Gallagher, I think all those guys are in the mix. Dustin, we'll start with you. We've seen a lot of these guys go at it head-to-head a few times this year. What do you make of 285, and is it just going to be another Sean Kinney, Matt Cruz match that we've seen about 14 times?
Well, I mean, Cruz has some work to do to get there, and Sean Kinney, like looking at Noah Tustin and looking at Stone Joseph and Charles Cruz and Trevor Gallagher too. There's some formidable guys in the top half of that bracket, but Sean Kinney's combination of size and skill and technique. I mean, he's such a smooth heavyweight. Just to imagine him not being in the finals, I can't even do that. But looking at the bottom, I mean, Julian LaVenture is a tough out. Leighton Schmick, I mean, I feel like, going into the South Central Regional, he was your number 4 heavyweight, right?
Right.
He gets dinged, and rightfully so, because he got pinned by Tyrese Washington of Manheim Township in the first round. But, that experience might be pretty good for him, because he had to battle and he had to fight through it. He had to win 4 matches in a row to get third and be here. Tough draw in Matt Cruz from Easton in round 1. I would also say that Leighton Schmick is a tough draw for Cruz. Like that matchup is Schmick is a 3-sport athlete: lacrosse, football, and wrestling, and he's just a handful because he's big and athletic. And if he puts it together, I mean, he's tough for anybody. So that Matt Cruz matchup will be a good one, I think, in round 1. And I think McChesney and Oliver Billett from Clearfield. I mean, there are some really good wrestlers in the bottom half of this bracket. I would, in the end, I kind of expect Chalk to win out, looking at McChesney and LaVenture. But, there's some different scenarios in play here, including Matt Cruz, who looks really good. You just see him, he got over the hump with Sean Kinney early this year, hasn't been able to kind of replicate that. But you take those losses out of play, I mean, you could make a case that he's the second or third best heavyweight too. So you have some unpredictable stuff in the bottom half of this bracket too, which is good, because I think the top half will be pretty predictable.
Well, did you forget to look at the bracket and see a guy named Billy McChesney? I
said McChesney.
Did you?
Yeah, I said Chalk's going to win out. I like McChesney and LaVenture. No.
Undefeated, 34-0.
I'm not going to gloss over.
Returning state medalist. Hey, come on. Him and Belade from Clearfield have wrestled before a couple years ago at the state tournament. Tom, Matt Cruz and Sean Kinney, has Matt Cruz's window closed, or does he still have another shot potentially?
Well, if Kinney wrestles the way he did in the regional final, the window's shut. Kinney wrestled more like an 89-pounder. He has that agility, he has that athleticism, he certainly has that meanness in him. But at times it kind of goes away. It went away last year. I mean, you expect it as a freshman. It went away last year in the super regional final. He loses to a kid who's like 70 pounds less than him from West Scranton. I mean, it should never have happened, but it did. And then, like you said, he came within an inch or so of winning a state title because he wrestled for 6 minutes, not like a heavyweight. And he's made that adjustment. I haven't seen that yet from Matt Cruz. Matt is more of a throwback kid, strong as an ox, really tough kid. He's not going to back down, but he's just not confident and aggressive enough in his offense. And that's kind of caught up to him against Kinney in particular, because Kinney went right after him and got a quick takedown on some adjustments he had made in the room. And I think we have to see that from Cruz before I can say he can survive that bottom half against some really good kids and against some kids who are athletic. I wouldn't say Matt Cruz is athletic. Now, he's not Stone out there, but he's not as athletic as some of these other guys we're talking about. So if he's going to use that size and strength, he's got to really get himself in motion a lot sooner than he does in some matches. But Kinney, I really like the way he's kind of developed. He lost a lot of baby fat, and he's added some real muscle. And again, he doesn't wrestle like a heavyweight when he's engaged. Excuse me, when he wrestled Tustin at Beast of the East, that was over pretty quickly. And once he got going against Tustin in the state team duels, there was clearly who was the better guy. But he's got to be engaged the whole time. Otherwise, there will be a pitfall here.
Julian LaVenture is my question mark, right? His only loss is to Nick Feldman, which, Nick Feldman has beaten Sean Kinney. He's beaten a bunch of guys in this weight class. But LaVenture, he had a good match with Redder. Tom, I know you cover Redder quite a lot. I thought Redder was going to be I kind of thought Redder was going to win that one. LaVenture, Upper Darby doesn't wrestle a Nazareth or a Waynesburg schedule, but LaVenture is a returning state medalist. What do you know about LaVenture, Tom, and were you surprised to see Redder fall to him?
Well, I was a little surprised, and especially the way it happened. Again, I thought Redder would be more active and score more points, and you're in a 1-0 match. Something's going to happen, and it's not always going to be good. So when you get hit with those 2 late stalls, you kind of have to look to yourself and say, where can I find some more scoring? But Redder, I thought, has been more active this year than he was last year. It was a reason why he lost to Cruz in the blood round over at Super Regionals. But I like what I've seen from Redder this year. And I now you look at this draw and you think, okay, because of that mistake he made in the last couple seconds against LaVenture, who was one of those guys who impressed me last year, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a kid, you can put him in the top 4 next year guaranteed. He kind of left an impression. McChesney left a much bigger impression, but again, McChesney's pretty damn good. So I think that because of the inconsistency of some of these guys when they fall back into that 285-pound mode, this is what's going to happen. You're going to find yourself wrestling Tustin, wrestling Kinney, wrestling Cruz just to get to the final. I mean, that's a big ask for anybody. But again, it is heavyweight, and if somebody doesn't come to wrestle that we think is really darn good, the only one I don't think is going to slip up is McChesney. I really like him. I really think he is as close as I will ever say to a lock to get to a final. Some of these crazy brackets, but he left a really good impression on me last year, and I thought it was just the wrong time for him to kind of come through. I mean, Schoen is just a whirling dervish. I'll never forget his first time I saw him freshman year. He just was out of this world, undersized, but like I've never seen somebody so strong. But anyway, I think McChesney has a real good chance to be a state finalist, a state champ. And if Kinney wrestles the way he has shown he can wrestle, I have no doubts that he will handle everybody in the top half of the bracket to get to that match with McChesney. And I think that would be a great final.
Yeah, I mean, I see Tom doesn't put any disrespect on McChesney like Dustin does. I will say, I mean, you look at you said inconsistency, and there's been a lot of inconsistency this year at heavyweight, which is not surprising. But Trevor Gallagher loses twice to Ben Stewart, beats him in the South Central Regional. Fred Redder beats Matt Cruz at Escape the Rock. I would agree with you. McChesney has been the steady horse. So has Kinney. But McChesney hasn't wrestled a guy like Nick Feldman either. So you look at the bracket, and heavyweight like this is so difficult to say, necessarily who's going to pan out, who's not. I like Charles Cruz from Williamsport a lot. I was really impressed with him. But he's just on the top half with some loaded guys. Dustin, Trevor Gallagher, is he going to be able to make some noise? Because when he's on, but he lost a few times to Ben Stewart, and you're thinking, okay, is he not quite there yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole South Central region has a tough climb this tournament. I don't think you could say the Leighton Schmick would be the favorite against Matt Cruz. That's kind of that's a good match. Ben Stewart from Central Dolphins gets a tough draw, and I think Trevor Gallagher. I just don't think he's in quite the same league as even a Charles Cruz, for example. I think he's got a tough road there. He's got a lot of work to do, and then bouncing down in the constellations. If Trevor Gallagher or really any of these South Central guys get onto the podium, I would consider that a pretty big victory.
Yeah, I would agree with you there on that. Looking at 285 and how it all shakes out, guys. That's all I got. 2 hours and 15 minutes. We killed it. You guys are the best. Tom, thank you so much. Your expertise is. I don't care what Dustin says about your TED Talks. They're the best. And Dustin, Jurassic Park for life. I love it. You probably got one of those Jeeps with the Jurassic Park logos on it, don't you?
I'm working toward it.
Okay.
Working toward
Well,
it. And Jeepers Cats, would that be awesome?
Jeepers Cats, that would be great. Tom, Dustin, I can't wait to see you guys in Hershey. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for tuning in to the PA Power Hour ×2. But we're gonna sign off here. We got updated rankings coming. We got a whole lot of stuff coming at you in the next couple of days. It's Hershey week, so you know we're about doing big things here at PA Power Wrestling. Until next time, we'll see you.